And I want to show you this also. This is a report from the newspaper regarding the convention that was held in 1928. Oh, I better start touching on some of the prophecies. You know what I'm going to do? Hold on. What I want to do at this point is I want to start touching on some of the prophecies that the prophet made regarding what would happen if his warning is not heeded. And you can see now, in light of current events, it's going to make a lot of sense. Might want to turn that light back on over there. In light of the current events, this is going to make a lot of sense, a lot of things he's saying. For instance, this was taken from a book published by Olive Ill called The Oral Statements and Prophecies of the Prophet Noble Ali. This is a prophecy. This book here, it's almost like hadith. It's almost like a form of hadith amongst the Moors, because it's collected from various people who knew the Prophet, who was around at that time. It's just taking different statements from them of things that the Prophet said and done and so on and so forth. So the analogy would be in Islam, Orthodox Islam would be a hadith. So naturally, some things have more weight than others. You know, it hasn't been weighted as of yet. And in Orthodox Islam, the hadith have been weighted so that certain things are given more authority than others. But this has not been weighted yet. One day probably it will be. One of the things the Prophet said there is, quote, he said that one day there's going to be a holy war. Now, what do you hear being taught about so much right now? All this talk about jihad, holy war. Well, you're going to see the Prophet. Now, keep in mind now, the Prophet speaking in 1928. This is 1928 now. At that time, I don't even think Saudi Arabia, the whole oil thing wasn't going yet. It wasn't going on yet. All you had there was desert sheiks, poor desert sheiks roaming the desert at this point. And it was right around this time that the big oil company stepped up in there and said, we'll develop your oil, we'll do the process, and we'll make you rich. And that's why you see all them countries are filthy rich right now, was because of this deal that was made right around this time. So you didn't have all this talk about jihad, holy war, or whatever against America, or all that stuff at that time. He said one day there's going to be a holy war. Prophecy number 168 says, now check this out, it says, quote, one day you are going to look out into the streets, and the streets are going to be filled with men with turbans and fezzes, and the highways are going to be blocked. Check out what else he says. He said, quote, keep this in mind, if his warning is not heeded, he said, you are going to be saved in a conflict that cannot be told in words. He also told the Moors, he said, one day the European is going to let you down. You are going to have to put up a 90-day supply of food to last you until your brothers come to rescue you from the east. So right there he's telling you, start preparing. Because he also said here he said that, he said here, if I were you, this is prophecy number 198, if I were you, I will get ready before you are made to do so. He's saying, get ready now. Don't wait till the last minute, till you're forced to. He says, start getting ready now. Put up your 90-day supply of food. Have your beans, have your stuff stored up. You never know what's going to happen. People think, you know, sometimes we think, oh, everything's fine. Don't be caught off guard like those ones like in Noah's time. You know, there was party and everything. They said, oh, look at Noah, he's crazy. Building a boat. I mean, and not to say that this happened literally, but the symbolic understanding of it, they were partying. Here he is building a boat on dry land. They thought he was a fool. They was having a good time. Here a man building a boat on dry land on top of a mountain or whatever. But then when the water started rising up, they was all banging on the boat, let us in, let us in, let us in. We don't want to be caught off guard like that. So prepare. As far as I'm concerned, every family, every household should have a survival kit. A basic survival kit of food that you stored up, flashlights, tents, you name it. I got a little kit, I got a number of kits, I got all kind of stuff in there. Stuff that I went to like campus supply stores and got, because you never know if you may even be out of doors. You might not be able to stay up on the home. So you got to remember, America, 85% of America is pure wilderness. The cities only take up 15% of America. So you got to understand, the first thing going to go is the cities. When you have outbreaks of smallpox, isn't it ironic? You remember the last meeting? I was speaking about religious freedom. I was speaking about how if America said mass vaccination of smallpox, how we could say we don't want to get it under religious freedom. Right after that, didn't the president announce mass smallpox and vaccination, everything? So it's just showing you we got to stay in tune with the times. The prophet also said, quote, prophecy number 57, he said, quote, watch the newspapers and listen to the radio. I am going to make the European tell the truth. So he's saying in the last days, listen carefully. What you hear in the newspapers, what you see on the news. He said, because he's going to make them tell the truth at that time. And if you listen carefully, you could distinguish the truth from what they're saying. He also said that, this is deep, because he said this in 1928 before anything about smart bombs. You know about all the smart bombs with laser accuracy. He said that, quote, one day bombs are going to fall so that they won't miss a spot as wide as my shoe. He said that you are going to need a basement to hide in, almost like bunkers. And so right there, he's describing smart bombs right there. He's saying that it's going to be so accurate that it's going to land in space, won't miss a spot even as wide as a shoe. So he's already predicting this, all the technology, smart bombs, all that stuff. Another prophecy he says here, he's predicting FEMA before FEMA is the Federal Emergency Management Agency. And FEMA has a series of plans. It was signed into law, a series of executive orders that are signed to law that if the president declares a state of national emergency, FEMA takes over all railroad, transportation, food supply, everything, and everybody has to register with the Postmaster General, where you will be allotted either to a work camp or a detention center or whatever the case may be. That's why you notice the Postmaster General, the post office in every neighborhood. So what better mechanism to round up everybody and to assign them where they are to go than through the post offices, all right? And that's through FEMA, Federal Emergency Management Agency. That's why when the riots broke out in Los Angeles, and the president came on and said, I declare a state of emergency for Los Angeles, and riots broke out of the cities, I thought at that time they were going to elevate it to a state of national emergency. So at that time, right around that time, that's when I started getting my survival kit together, because I knew it could be on at any moment. That's the same time I started going out to the woods with Rudy Duckett, Brother Abdul Hakim Rashan, studying the different herbs, survival foods, all that, because I wanted to know how to be able to survive in the woods if I have to, and know the foods that's available in the winter as well as the summer, because the prophet also said this also. He said, and this is deep, and this is something I always thought about. He said, quote, number 163, quote, pray that you don't have to make your flight in the wintertime. And it goes on to say that we should pray that we do not have to make our flight from destruction at the end of time in the wintertime. The destruction is going to be bad enough without the added problem, ice or snow, to make our situation more difficult. Knows that always their wars, they plan right around that same time, right around wintertime. The last Gulf War was right around wintertime. Right now, it's right around wintertime when they're planning it. You see? So this way, if things break down, people ain't going to have an outlet in the wilderness type of thing. It make it easier for them to round you up because you'll be kept, indoors more or less. You see? So you got to understand that. You got to really know and understand survival. Like they say, I used to put out a survival manual called, it says survival. On the bottom it says, if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. You see what I'm saying? You got to be ready. Sometimes when I go out in the woods, I walk through the woods with my children sometimes, and I said, while we walking through here, let's formulate a meal. And so we walk, and I say, all right, there goes some mustard garlic, there goes some of this, there goes some of that. I'm actually trying to compose a meal as I'm walking, because I say to myself, it may come a time where I'm stranded. I don't even have access to my survival kit. I might have to know how to improvise and survive right there. Go out with my children, we make lean-to shelter, just get in practice, just for fun. Because a day may come where you might have to live like that. I asked my sons one day, I said, if you was in the woods and you had to cook something and you don't have no pots or pans, how would you cook it? I said, let's say you want to boil water. I said, how would you do it? And they were thinking, they were like, all right, you can't make a pot out of leaves or something like that, because the minute you put it on the fire, it's going to burn up. You can't make it out of wood, it'll burn up. So how would you do it? And they thought about it. I said, this is the way the elders used to do it. They dig a hole, line it with something, you put the water in,